Hello, welcome to the video. My name's Paul and this is Paul's British English. Today we're going to talk about a common error that I hear many students make. We're going to talk about the difference between the modal verbs must, have to and should. To begin with, let's look at must and have to. These are both modal verbs of obligation. That is something that you have no choice about. It's a necessity. Now, must and have to are very similar in meaning, but there is a slight difference in meaning. To begin with, let's look at must. Must is more formal than have to. We would use must in written English, or you would use must in a situation where it's quite a formal situation, or you would use must if you have a strong opinion about something. So an example sentence, let's say you go to the cinema, you go to the movie theatre, and when you're there, there's a sign in the movie theatre that says, all customers must have a ticket. That's very formal English. They're saying you have to have a ticket to go into the movie theatre. And they're using must because it's quite a formal sign. Must with regards to a strong opinion, you could use that if, let's say, somebody called you and your friend is very eager for you to call them back. So they might say, you must call them back. So it's a strong opinion that they're giving. Have to is similar to must, but it's more commonly used. Have to is very commonly used in speaking. And also it's slightly less formal. And have to relates more to rules, things that you have to do, like a necessity. So an example could be something along the lines of, I have to wear a tie when I work. I don't really necessarily want to wear a tie, but I have to, it's a rule. Or, I have to wear a seatbelt when I drive my car. Now, the way I say it there, have to, it's an obligation. It's not necessarily something that I feel strongly about, but it's an obligation. Equally, with wearing a seatbelt, if I feel strongly about it, I could say, I must wear a seatbelt while I drive. Just because it's a very strong opinion and it's a strong obligation. So sometimes these words can be used in place of each other, but often they can't be. Like I say, must is more formal most of the time, and must can sometimes be used incorrectly. So, if you are unsure which one to use have to, because when you're speaking that can never be wrong. So it's a kind of cheat. Okay, so remember, must is for strong opinions and more formal. Have to is more common in everyday speech, and they're both related to obligation. Okay, now let's look at the word should. Should is used when you're giving advice or an opinion. So it's not as strong as must and not as strong as have to. It's advice or opinion. So an example sentence could be, if the weather is cold, you should wear a coat. You should wear a jacket. Or if your friend rings and another friend wants you to call them back but doesn't have a very strong opinion on it, they should say, you should call them back. They're giving advice, they're giving an opinion, but not a strong one. Must can also be used when giving an opinion, but it's if you're giving an opinion which is very strong, so you must call them back. So most of the time when we're talking about an advice or an opinion, we would use should. If we make these modal verbs negative, they change in meaning slightly. So shouldn't and should. If I use shouldn't in the negative, so should not, it is almost exactly the opposite of should. So if I say you shouldn't call him back, it's advice, it's an opinion. I don't think it's a good idea to call him back. You shouldn't call him back. So that's a kind of opposite of should. If I use mustn't in the negative, so must not, mustn't is something that is forbidden. You're not allowed to do it. So let's say you go into the cinema again. There could be a sign there that say customers mustn't smoke inside the cinema. It's against the rules to smoke inside the cinema. The difference in meaning between the positive and the negative is have to. So have to in the positive shows an obligation. Must shows an obligation. Mustn't shows a negative obligation. If I say don't have to, that's not showing a negative obligation. What that's saying is there is no obligation. So if I said I don't have to finish my essay by Saturday. Now I could, if I wanted to, I could finish it on Friday, I could finish it on Saturday. It's not a big deal. It's not an obligation, so don't have to. So just in summary, must, it's a strong word. It means obligation and it's used in formal English and when you give strong opinions. Mustn't means forbidden, so cannot do it. Have to is an obligation and it's very common in everyday speech. So if you're ever struggling between have to and must, use have to. Don't have to means there is no obligation. So you can do it if you want, but it's up to you. It's your decision. Should is when we are talking about advice or an opinion, and shouldn't is when we're talking about a negative advice or a negative opinion. Okay, so hopefully this will make it easier for when you use these words in the future. If you like the video, please hit the like button. Also, you can subscribe to us here on YouTube, you can subscribe to us on Facebook, you can follow us on Naver Blogs, and you can look at our website, which is paulsbritishenglish.com, and there are lots of details on there about how we can help you. Thank you for watching the video.